What you're about to hear is not a hypothetical. This is not a war game scenario. This is not the plot of a thriller novel. This is the world as it stands on the 21st of March, 2026. 21 days into the most dangerous military confrontation the Middle East has ever seen, and arguably the most consequential international crisis since the Second World War. We are on the brink. And today, we are going to break down exactly how we got here, what is happening right now, and what the next 48 hours could mean for the entire planet. Let's start at the beginning, because to understand the crisis of today, you have to understand the spark of February 28th. That was the day the world changed. On the morning of February 28th, 2026, Israel and the United States launched a coordinated series of strikes against Iran, targeting its nuclear program, ballistic missile infrastructure, military leadership, and armed forces. This was not a limited strike. This was not a warning shot. This was a full-scale military campaign designed, in the words of both governments, to achieve regime change in Tehran and permanently dismantle Iran's ability to threaten the region. The strikes came at a moment when Iran was arguably at its weakest point in years, battered by sanctions, shaken by internal protests in early 2026, and significantly degraded by the Israeli 12-day war fought just 9 months earlier in June 2025. Many of Iran's key regional allies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and others, had been severely weakened by years of Israeli military operations. Washington and Jerusalem calculated that this was the window, perhaps the last window, to act through military means rather than diplomacy. Within hours of those first strikes, the unthinkable happened. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was assassinated on February 28th. Early on March 1st, Iranian state media confirmed his death. His son Mojtaba Khamenei, who survived by seconds according to leaked audio, was elevated as the new supreme leader. The killing of a sitting supreme leader was without historical precedent. It sent shockwaves not just through Tehran, but through every capital on Earth. And Iran's response was immediate, massive, and global. In retaliation, Tehran launched an unprecedented barrage of missiles and drones at multiple Gulf states. For the first time in history, Iran attacked all 6 Gulf Cooperation Council countries simultaneously: Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. These were not token strikes. Energy infrastructure was hit. Military bases were struck. Commercial hubs were targeted. Iran hoped its broad horizontal escalation would exact costs and pressure its adversaries into mediation. Instead, it drew the entire region into the fire. The scale of what followed is almost incomprehensible. According to the U.S. military's Central Command, CENTCOM, American forces alone have struck more than 7,000 targets inside Iran since February 28th, employing over 20 distinct weapon systems across air, sea, land, and missile defense forces. Weapons deployed include Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from Navy destroyers in the Arabian Sea, the precision strike missile used in combat for the first time ever, MQ-9 Reaper drones and F-35 aircraft. On the defensive side, both Patriot and THAAD systems have been working around the clock to intercept incoming Iranian missiles. Meanwhile, Iran has been firing back relentlessly. By March 5th, Iranian military sources reported that Tehran had launched over 500 ballistic and naval missiles and nearly 2,000 drones since the conflict began. Approximately 40% aimed at Israel and 60% targeting U.S. military assets across the region. The numbers are staggering, and the human cost has been devastating. The deadliest single incident of the war occurred in the southeastern Iranian city of Minab, where a strike on an elementary girls' school killed more than 170 people, most of them schoolchildren. According to the World Health Organization, at least 18 hospitals and health facilities across Iran have been struck on the Israeli home front. The missile threat has been relentless. Between February 28th and March 4th alone, ACLED documented more than 90 attempted Iranian strikes against Israel, with around 20 directly hitting civilian areas. An Iranian ballistic missile struck the city of Beit Shemesh in central Israel on March 1st, killing 9 people and injuring over 20. The Iron Dome and David's sling systems have been working at maximum capacity, but no air defense system is impenetrable, and Iran knows that. And this war has not stayed contained within Israel and Iran. It has metastasized. Hezbollah in Lebanon resumed hostilities against Israel on March the 2nd, launching missiles and drones across the border and triggering a new wave of Israeli airstrikes reaching as far as southern Beirut. A Hezbollah drone also struck a British Royal Air Force base in Cyprus, directly hitting a NATO-aligned facility and widening the conflict's geographic footprint. Lebanon's death toll has already surpassed 800 lives. And on day 19th, this past Wednesday, came yet another escalation. Israel struck Iran's South Pars natural gas field, the single largest natural gas field on Earth. In response, Iranian forces attacked energy infrastructure across Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and other Gulf states, Oil and gas prices surged globally. This is where we stand on March 21st. 21 days in, thousands dead. The Strait of Hormuz effectively closed, energy markets in chaos. Global food prices rising as fertilizer and fuel flows through the strait have been disrupted. The UN World Food Program has warned of long-term global food security consequences. And the question on every analyst's lips, every diplomat's mind, is this. Are we 48 hours from the moment this war becomes something that can never be walked back? Welcome back. In Session 1, we traced the arc of this war from the opening strikes of February 28th through the assassination of Supreme Leader Khamenei, Iran's massive retaliation across the Gulf, and the catastrophic human and economic toll now rippling across the entire region. Now in Session 2, we go deeper. We examine the nuclear dimension, the diplomacy, or lack thereof, the global powers circling this conflict, and the single most important question. Are we genuinely on the brink of something larger? Something that historians will one day call a world war? Let's start with the nuclear question, because it sits at the heart of everything. Iran entered 2026 with 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity, enough, if further enriched, for as many as 10 nuclear weapons. Before the June 2025 strikes, Tehran was less than 2 weeks away from enriching enough uranium for one nuclear bomb, according to U.S. intelligence assessments. That is the number that haunted Washington and Jerusalem and ultimately drove the decision to act. And here is the strategic irony that no one on either side wants to say out loud. The very strikes designed to eliminate Iran's nuclear threat may have accelerated the timeline for Iran to pursue a weapon, if any of its nuclear material and expertise survived. There's one potential diplomatic off-ramp still on the table. Iran's nuclear program could offer a path to de-escalation if the interim leadership agrees to grant international access to the Esfahan facility. It remains possible that highly enriched uranium could be safely transported out of Esfahan by a team of international inspectors, potentially as part of a diplomatic agreement to end the ongoing conflict. Much will depend on whether Iran's interim leaders see diplomacy as a viable off-ramp or as a sign of weakness. And right now, the signals coming out of Tehran are not encouraging. The Iranian regime perceives that it is in an existential conflict, and it does not appear to be interested in an immediate off-ramp. From Iran's perspective, a cessation of hostilities would merely be a temporary respite before the United States or Israel restart the conflict once they have replenished their military supplies. Therefore, a slow, protracted war of attrition is probably Iran's intended outcome. Iranian leaders are calculating that their country is more willing to take casualties and absorb pain than either the United States or Gulf countries. That is a chilling strategic calculus. And it means this war does not end simply because one side decides it wants it to. On the diplomatic front, the picture is fractured. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke with Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian and called on Iran to halt what he described as unacceptable attacks against countries in the region. Macron warned that the current escalation could drag the entire region into chaos, with severe consequences both in the immediate term and in the years to come, emphasizing that any future arrangement must ensure that Iran never acquires nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, the United States has been working to expand a multinational coalition aimed at ensuring the safe passage of vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump called on China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom to join the effort, but Japan announced it will not send warships, and Australia also confirmed it will not participate in military activity in the area. The coalition of the willing is looking less willing by the day, and then there is China. Beijing's position is the wild card that every analyst is watching. China is Iran's largest remaining economic partner. It cannot receive Iranian crude while the Strait of Hormuz is shut. Every day the blockade continues, Iran severs its own economic lifeline and alienates the one major power that has consistently shielded it at the United Nations. This gives Beijing extraordinary leverage. Why? But China has thus far refused to use it publicly, preferring to call for restraint while quietly protecting its economic interests. If China decides to step in as a mediator, it could accelerate a ceasefire. If China decides to deepen its support for Iran behind the scenes, it could extend the war indefinitely. Russia's posture is equally consequential. Moscow has condemned the strikes diplomatically, but with its military bogged down in Ukraine and its economy strained by years of sanctions, Russia has limited capacity to materially support Tehran. What Russia can do, and appears to be doing, is use the chaos of this conflict to draw Western attention and resources away from Ukraine, buying time on its own front. Two major wars burning simultaneously across Eurasia is not an accident of history. It is a strategic environment that certain powers find advantageous. Now, the WW3 question. Let's be precise about what that actually means. With neither side positioned for a decisive win, the escalation risks are sobering. Diplomacy is crucial to prevent renewed hostilities, but an immediate ceasefire is the priority. The International Crisis Group has called the U.S.-Israeli campaign reckless and almost certainly unlawful under international law. Strong language from one of the world's most respected conflict analysis organizations. A limited Israeli ground invasion of Lebanon began on March 17th, amid reports that a broader ground offensive is likely, with Israeli evacuation orders already displacing more than 1 million Lebanese civilians. A full-scale ground war in Lebanon, simultaneous with the air campaign against Iran and the ongoing Gaza conflict, would stretch Israeli military capacity to its absolute limits and would dramatically increase the risk of miscalculation. That is the word that matters most right now, miscalculation, not deliberate escalation into a world war. But an error, a strike that goes too far, a retaliatory missile that hits the wrong target, a naval confrontation in the Strait of Hormuz that spins out of control. Both Israel and Iran believe they are fighting existential threats. Historical diplomatic off-ramps that previously de-escalated tensions appear to be non-existent. When two nuclear-adjacent powers, backed by the world's largest military, locked in an openly declared existential struggle, share no functional diplomatic channel, that is the definition of a countdown. The next 48 hours will tell us whether any off-ramp survives, whether Tehran's new leadership chooses survival over ideology, whether Washington blinks before the Strait becomes a naval battlefield, whether the world steps in or steps back and watches. We are not yet in a world war, but we are closer than we have been in 80 years. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and we'll be back when the next critical moment demands your attention.